and he said that the train was running away and unable to control the speed and was traveling at a high rate of speed.
They soon realize that their equipment is not up to the task of unbending the steel in a damaged locomotive cab.
So, 34 years to the day, May 12th, 1989, there was a huge train wreck. All started off with miscalculations and some failing equipment. More specifically, some failing dynamic brakes on several train engines. I believe it was a total of 6 train engines. Only 2 of them had intermediately working dynamic brakes, and I didn't know what dynamic brakes were until I started researching this video. It was within the wheels of a train, and they create friction, so it acts as a kind of like a slowing sort of device, not to bring a train to a complete stop, but it creates resistance so the train can't move as fast without actually applying brakes to stop the train. So 6 engines, 69 ore carts, come plummeting down the Cajon Pass. I guess right here, I don't know if the turn isn't steep enough to derail the train or not, or they just weren't going that fast at this point. But once they got down into San Bernardino, more specifically Duffy Street, that's when everything was let loose and a big accident happened. We're gonna go check that out momentarily, but first, we're here at Hill 582, which this train would have passed. It would have came through here. Let me turn it around so you guys can see a little better. The train would have came barreling through here at one point, not as fast as it was once it got down to the bottom of the Cajon Pass, but yeah, right past here, would have went right through here. And to make matters even worse, there was a big fire, huge, and we'll talk about that when we get down to Duffy Street in San Bernardino. All right, guys, so here we are. This is where the scene of the crash took place. Right here, in this now vacant lot. Just after, I believe it was just after 7:30 in the morning on May 12th, 1989. Let's see if we can get up there on the berm and see if we can get a better view. What do you think, Mrs. 909? You up for that little climb?
Yeah.
You can even see right here there was a driveway that led to nothing, or that leads to nothing, once led to a home. And you can see some broken up foundation there. Man, people have definitely been using this as their dumping ground.
So did anybody die when this happened?
Yes, 2 people died. Actually, I'm sorry, 4 people died. 2 people in the train. I don't think it was the conductor. I think it was the brakeman and somebody else. I'll flash it up here on the screen now. And 2 people on the ground, both kids.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, one was 7. I believe the other was 10
Because
or
they were
11.
outside playing, or they were in their
They
house?
were in their house. It's 7:30 in the morning, so they were probably getting ready to wake up, go to school.
That sucks.
Yeah.
And so you can't build it here no more?
No, the county, either the city or the county rezoned it. You cannot build here anymore.
And how many houses?
I believe it was a total of 7 houses. And then once the fire broke out, which we'll get to in a minute, then it destroyed another, I think it was 11 houses.
Like around here? So some people
Yes.
have rebuilt where they could
Yeah,
rebuild?
so let's get up there and we'll talk about the houses that were rebuilt.
It stinks.
Yeah, it does. It smells really bad right here. Okay, so right here, this is as far as we'll go. Because, I mean, we can get a pretty good layout of everything. But here, right here, Mrs. 909. So this little curve here, the max speed,
This way or this way?
they were coming from the Cajon Pass.
Okay.
So they lost their brakes. They lost dynamic brakes, which are basically a little motor inside of the wheels, creates friction, and it keeps the train supposedly from going out of control.
How far were they up before they started losing control?
They were on top.
And
They
it
were
took
on
them
top,
that
so
long?
they were doomed from the start because they didn't know that their dynamic brakes weren't working.
So all the way at the top of the Cajon, they lost their brakes and they just...
Right, so there were 6 engines. Only 2 of the dynamic brakes out of the 6 engines were working. Okay, so they had all this weight, 69 cars, hopper cars. So it was carrying this stuff called Trona.
I was going to say, was it full of stuff?
Yeah, they were all full. It was full of Trona. And, you know, let's figure out what Trona is together, guys. I'll flash something up here on the screen. But it was full of that. And when they were at the top of the hill, they started realizing, hey, we're picking up speed here. Our dynamic brakes are not working. So at first it didn't alarm them very much. And then as they were picking up more and more speed, you know, they started worrying about it. So they just hit the brakes, you know, not just the dynamic brakes, but the actual brakes to stop. Okay, so they hit the brakes to stop, which removes the dynamic braking. Okay, so all those little motors, they completely shut off, the few that were working. So the brakes kick in for a few seconds, and then after, you know, a certain amount of time, I forget, I mean, it wasn't very long, probably less than a minute, brakes were gone, period. So they had no dynamic braking and no more brakes. So, you know, they're coming down the Cajon Pass right over there. And, you know, that's a lot of weight. They miscalculated the weight to begin with. So as it was, the 6 cars weren't even enough to do what they were doing to begin with. So, you know, they're coming down. They can't slow down. They were going to Colton. I believe they were going to Colton, or they were going to go through it. So they radio ahead to Colton that they cannot stop their train. The train is a runaway. They started calling Mayday, Mayday. You know, like how you would hear on a ship or an airplane if they're going down. The Mayday, Mayday, they're throwing out their Mayday distress calls. And they knew they were doing at least 90 miles an hour at the time. But later, after the crash, you know, you've heard of the black box, right? Airplanes have them, ships have them. There's a black box that records everything, conversations, everything. So their black box said they were going 110 miles an hour.
Dang.
110 miles an hour coming down this curve. And before you get to this curve, you're supposed to slow down. Max speed limit on this curve here, 35 miles an hour. So when you hit this curve at, you know, 110, you're in for some serious trouble. So they got derailed. The train was derailed and it all landed right here.
It landed on the houses?
It landed on the houses. It took them out. Now the houses, I heard there was 4 houses that were rebuilt. These 2 right here.
This one?
Yeah, this one.
And this one?
I'm
this
not,
one and this one?
I'm not 100% sure if it's the one next to it or this blue one here. But this one for sure. This house was rebuilt.
And then that one.
And then that one.
Dang.
Yeah.
And then
And then 2 kids lost their lives.
What happened with the fire? Why was there a fire?
Okay, so after everything's said and done, well, we actually should probably go back down so we could talk about it a little bit more. But just remember this, guys. Remember this aerial view. Okay? All right, so now, you know, we're down here right where the train wreck came to lay and rest. You know, 2 of the helper engines, which are the engines in the rear, were supposed to help with braking power coming down the Cajon, that were pretty much completely disabled. We're still resting on the tracks. Everything else after the helper, all 69 hopper cars, were all, you know, a big twisted pile of metal here, along with the lead engines. So, you know, later on, I believe it was May 26th, they were, you know, in the midst of cleaning up. A backhoe comes and strikes the petroleum pipeline here.
So it wasn't the train's fault for that explosion? Yes and no, but it wasn't the
If it
train
didn't
that
derail
did it.
here, we wouldn't be here digging in the first place. Now, in the morning of May 26th, they were doing the cleanup, and there was a slight odor of gas, fuel. So there was a slight odor of gas, fuel. There was a mist of the petroleum basically all over the neighborhood. And they believe, because, I mean, if you guys know, it's not the actual liquid that burns, but it's the fumes from the gas that burn. Or they're saying that some sort of pilot, I'm assuming it's a hot water heater pilot, ignited the fumes and started the fire. It took them 7 hours to get the fire out because of low water pressure. Nobody could get close to it.
And it took out more houses?
It took out more houses and claimed 2 more lives. All right here. So the entire neighborhood was covered with fuel. Nobody really gave it a second thought before the fire happened. And
what is that gas for?
The gas is for fuel for vehicles.
And it runs right here?
Yeah, it runs all the way from Los Angeles. I think somebody said that it starts at the ports in Long Beach, and it goes all the way up to Vegas.
That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
And did they fix it? It's all fixed, or is
Yeah,
it
well,
not
yeah,
here
it's all
no more?
fixed. I mean, it's still here. And
Did you see that?
It's only 6
Just
feet.
to remove damage or removal of the sign is a federal offense subject to a $5,000 fine and or 1 year imprisonment.
Yep.
Just for taking the sign.
I know.
Dang.
Yeah, so that exact same pipeline is still here, just repaired. 6 feet underground. That's it.
So how did what'd you say it was? A hoe?
A backhoe?
A backhoe get it if he's just cleaning up? Why did he dig so deep?
I don't know.
What was the
Who knows?
point of
But
that?
you know what? Again, you know, that was probably a pretty big scar from whatever the train cars, the engines, everything coming down. So it could have just dug its way down to the pipeline.
I wonder if that person lost his job.
I don't know. Well, that's the interesting thing. Between, you know, the miscalculation of the weight of the train, this fire, there was no charges ever filed.
Really?
Yeah.
So it was all just an accident?
Yeah, it was all just an accident.
So those people who lost their lives didn't get nothing? Did they get any money from the city, or?
I don't know. It wouldn't have been the city's fault. It would have been the railroad.
Well, wouldn't it have been the city for who cleaned it up and hit the pipe?
Well, no, I mean, the railroad would have been responsible for it, for the cleanup. Okay, so imagine, you know, this is liquid that's on fire. I know I just said the liquid doesn't burn. It's the fumes that really is what's burning. But there's so much pressure in these water pipes, or in these, not these water pipes, the petroleum pipes. It was shooting 300 feet in the air. So these telephone poles are 50 feet. So imagine 6 of these on top of each other, and that would be a wall of fire. Something else really quick, guys. Just another portion of the neighborhood that was affected. I believe this is from the fire, but they were never rebuilt, obviously. Man. All right, guys, so this happened again, 1989, and I just Googled it. I actually grew up only 5 miles from here, guys. This isn't very far. I was already born by then. I was born in 85. I would have been 4, so obviously, you know, I don't remember it, but this is kind of close to home for me, unfortunately. It's very different from, you know, the area where I grew up. Even the area I grew up is different from when I grew up, but very odd for something like this to happen so close to home. But again, you know, I don't remember it. Right. Train wreck 1989. Bartender, Coors Light, please.